Hello.
Hello.
Long time no see.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fine as well. I'm fine
Yeah.
as well. So this chain is working very, very good. I'm really impressed
Oh,
about
it's
this.
fantastic
Yeah,
building off of the other conversations. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I was just listening to what you were thinking about, and today morning when I felt when I was kind of got the questions and some of the preparation stuff for this talk, I decided not to start thinking about that because I don't know, I just wanted to be a little bit more spontaneous, and we also didn't really discuss anything
No.
about what we are going to talk about. And when I started to sit down a little bit this morning and start to think about that, one thing came to my mind, and it's very well fitting to what you are saying is the commitment or the late commitment and having options open. I mean, there is a big theory and many other things like design thinking and many other things are related to that. But I got introduced to that, and I don't know if you know that book, which is called Commitment from Chris
I can
Metz.
I can pull it up right here. It's on my bookshelf. Yeah, it's
Very good, very
great.
good, very good. So it's a great book, and it's a comic book, so it's even a different style. But anyhow, so when I first heard about the creation of that book and that concept, then somewhat it's sticking to my mind that even though that's a very simple thing, right? That don't make commitments very early, keep your options open. I think that's the kind of single sentence summary of that, because options have value, and 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 what you were just talking about, that enabling people to be able to build up their pipeline, or being able to test things easier. That's basically, you are not committed to making to make concrete decisions that this is how we are going to test this, or I'm stepping in and I will do the testing for you. But instead of that, you are just providing options, provide enabling things, so that they can find their own way within those options, and that's the great thing. And I think that's very, very important. That's I, I I somehow think that this is the, or at least for me, this is the power behind the open source projects as well. Um, I don't know how much uh, practice you had with open source project, but for me, I was I was working at a company where we were mainly doing project work for different clients, and of course, all of them were secret and private to that particular customer. We It was even hard if you wanted to share some code base from one customer's project to the other customer's project because of legal reasons. And and when I did when I did SpecFlow, which is a kind of .NET port of Cucumber in 2009, then we were started to have a discussion about that. Okay, why not open source that? Because I mean, Cucumber is anyway open source. Well, that looks like fun, and we said, well, yeah, why not? I mean, even our management was pretty positive about that, and we made it open source. But that was my first open source project experience, and it took a long time to understand how that works and how open source project can operate at all. Because of course there is this initial excitement where you want to do this massive creation, but then it just comes to a kind of level where where you have to maintain, where you have to extend, where you have to get the collaborators in, and I don't think that SpecFlow was a good example, or is a good example, or was a good example of that. So I think there are much better open source projects than that. But I learned that basically how open source project works, or open source projects work, is that they are, instead of telling you what to do, so typically the project maintainer doesn't tell you that, okay, this is your task and this is how you should do that, but it just giving you options in a way that maybe they are flagging the issues, that okay, maybe that's up for grab, or something like that, or they are providing you a CI where you can verify your own work without even before you would be committed to make it as a real proposal for the project, and or you can fork it even, so you can even make more experiments before you just commit and make it online. And I realized that's a thing that we are also missing in non-open source projects as well. And that's basically what you are saying is that so that's what we can learn, and that I'm really glad that we did that project, because that's a very important learning that I had.
Yeah, I think the thing I hear with that is you give people options, but you provide like coaching feedback almost. So one of the things that, we were talking about is like that I was mentioning in the last conversation was around like having my experience as a consultant has actually opened my eyes to the value of documentation and training and support of rolling things out in organizations when I'm a full-time employee member, right? Like, because I've seen that like building the crown jewels worth of tools or anything else, like even in your case of saying, giving the perfect CI pipeline that allows you to test things in a million different ways and it's your choice as to how to do it, like that's actually sometimes paralyzing, because it's like there's so many options and you don't know how any of them work really. And so you end up either doing nothing or doing whatever it is, using the one hammer you know how to use. And so one of the things I was talking about actually just today is this concept of having ideas be championed by people or introduced by people. So ideas being introduced by people, but then being reinforced and supported through automation. And I think it's really key here, because the reason why I think this is powerful, and I'm kind of building on it a bit, is that people aren't going to like just go read the documentation. They need to generate a bit of buzz about like, why is this valuable? You need to like talk to them about their problem space and explain and figure out if this is a good fit, if this is fit for purpose and going to help them in some way. But I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've ever been the person who cares about something on a project that no one else particularly has picked up yet, and you're just like in every pull request being like, are there tests? Like, or, comment your code, or, whatever it is that is your thing that you think you should be doing. Is this too big to be a pull request? Whatever it is. A, you get tired of that really fast. B, other people get tired of you really fast. And C, it's not maintainable or scalable. Like you go on vacation and it doesn't happen, right? And you come back and you're frustrated that there's been no improvement in there. And so when you've identified something that and you've built enough hype to realize that this is something that's helpful to the team, to the organization, whatever, I feel like one of the first things that you need to do is build an automated feedback loop about it. And so it doesn't have to be like automated remediation. It doesn't have to be like this perfect, thing. But we were talking today about examples that could be just Git hooks. So if you commit a PR and you introduce a new file in the database migration directory, create a new comment in Git that says like, I see you have a migration, like, and whatever matters about the migration, right? Like whatever it is you guys say, oh, make sure you test it in staging on this database type, or make sure you run it by itself and have a rollback plan, whatever it is. But like giving that feedback loop where it's not a human, I feel like is going to help actually encourage those new behaviors.
Yep.
But have you ever used anything along those lines, or?
Not so many. So, but I absolutely agree with you, and I absolutely see the point. So that in some ways the pull requests are in a form working like that, but of course there are typically. I mean, it's also interesting that when we are talking about a pipeline or a continuous delivery pipeline, then I still many people are just seeing this as a tool for building my product and running my tests. But that's just an oversimplification of that, because I think the story starts from the word integration and what does integration means, and people try to answer this question in a general manner that, okay, yes, well, if there is no file level conflict between my files and all of my tests are running, then it must be integrating, or maybe my integration tests was running. But that's not necessarily enough. And the interesting part, or the exciting part of that, comes from the context specific things. So if changing a database schema is a thing, or is causing trouble, then that should be also part of my pipeline. But it's only my pipeline. Maybe your pipeline is completely different, and you need other things. And so that's the creative part of CI, which I think probably by today we are hopefully at the stage that every company is trying to set up at least some build server or something which is doing something automated. But I think that's supposed to be the next step, that people finally understand that they have to make it their own, and they have to figure out that what is needed to make the things really continuous in that sense. Once I had a talk about that, and there I was just trying to narrow this question to the point that just imagine that you would be the one who needs to press the release button. So just think about what kind of things, what kind of fears you would have at that time, and write them down. And probably those are those things that you have to put in your pipeline, or those are the things that you finally have to implement in your CI, even if your product is otherwise not continuously deployed, because there are many products there it's not really possible, not practical from marketing and many other reasons, or not annoy users for the constant changes. But all those technical backups, or all those technical support can be done and works super well, even if you are just releasing quarterly or whatever.
Yeah, I've been curious. So I don't know if you were at were you at QConfess this year, back in June? Were you? I don't remember if I saw you there. But either way, we've talked about.
I wasn't
BDD
talking. I mean, I was just an attendee.
Yeah. But like, I mean, we've chatted at other events and things, and obviously you have a really strong history in improving and supporting BDD implementations in the wild and in open source and all that. I'm curious how, like, all this conversation about pipelines is talking about how to get to a release, right? What would be, if you were the person pressing that release button, what would you be worried about? How do we build that in? I love that. That's exactly the mentality we want all of our engineers and our product owners and anybody involved in software creation and delivery to be thinking about, even if they're not the release manager or the decider or whatever. How do we build past building into how people work? Like, how do we get BDD, which is talking about how we build something, to also engage with how we support it, how we maintain it, how we get feedback from it in its lifetime? Because the building phase is such a small percentage of its lifetime, really, as a product.
Yeah. As a software developer, obviously, those kind of things, I mean, the pipelines, we weren't calling them pipelines, I think, at that time. But anyway, so those things were important for me even before that. And having some automated tests, having some automated feedback was important for me. But I had some sort of frustration. And my frustration was that I'm putting significant effort to build up these automated verifications, like writing tests. And then they were very quickly went outdated and went useless, and that was a kind of bad feeling. And my primary goal was to try to make these tests more valuable or better or something like that. And for me, this kind of separation of what I want to do and making it more clear what is the expectation, and separated a little bit of how I'm solving it, was very helpful, because then, so to say, that I'm focusing on one problem at one time, so that once I'm in the discovery phase, when we are figuring out what to do next, then I can focus on the problem. and then once I'm in the solution space, I can better focus on the solution. And those things are, maybe it's a kind of better focus on one thing at one time, even though that this time can even maybe switch daily basis, but at least I'm only focusing on one problem. And obviously that was also a kind of eye-opener for me, because before that, I was using some sort of classification of tests that many people are doing, and many people are still doing right now, that you have unit test, integration test, end-to-end test. And I just realized that this kind of classification wasn't really helpful for me, because it was telling me what is the technology, or how I know how a unit test works, and if whatever I'm just calling out to an interface, that's not a unit test anymore, or whatever. So I know the mechanics of that, but it's really talking about the mechanics of the of this, and not what do I want to do with this test? What do I want to verify with that test? And I think, like just many other people, when I was just jumping into BDD and we had a great tool or whatever we could play with, I thought that, okay, that will help with all of my testing problems. And obviously we wanted to write all of our tests in BDD, and we quickly realized that that's not good. That's not useful. There are some tests that make sense with BDD. So it's just those that I want to discuss with the business, those that are really focusing on the expectation and not the solution. But there are other kinds of tests as well, and it doesn't matter whether they are at the end a unit test or an integration test or an end-to-end test, but they have some other purposes, which is not verifying the functional behavior, whether the application still works as expected, but maybe that it's robust, maybe that it's having a good code quality, maybe that it's documented well enough, or maybe there is a rollback plan of the schema change that we are introducing. So basically, that's for me how these things are connected. That basically this was opening my eyes how to categorize the tasks, and what kind of things have to work together to be able to really give that final good outcome.
Yeah, building that why is so important. So I'm curious, so like that's how you got to where you are today. So if we're thinking about kind of the prompts a bit here, like what do you see as the future? Like what do you see as like the next steps with where you're thinking, where your current challenges are, and that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know. I think through my life, I start to worry about less and less about the future. And I just realized that that's strange. So sometimes I was just reading some very old texts from the Greeks, and how they were talking, or the Bible, some the conversations from there, and I kind of was amazed that 2,000, 3,000 years ago, people were trying to have the same conversations, having the same problems like we had today. So there are some things which are kind of stable. Of course, many things are changing, but the core problems, the core challenges that we want to connect with each other, where we want to have some conversations, we want to have a good discussion. Those things are always there. So I don't think, and the same happened to me with software development as well. In the beginning, I thought that, okay, when I learned programming, I was learned in a classic procedural way, not even object orientation in the beginning. Then we learned about object orientation, and people were saying that, oh, this is going to be the future. Then more focusing on functional programming, than that going to be. But I just realized that it's not like that. So there is no clear winner. Object orientation has a lot of good things. Functional programming has a lot of good things, and procedural programming also has a lot of good things. And now I'm trying to teach I'm teaching, but it's a question whether they really get it. My children about programming, and there I just had to learn that there is a way of learning, and there is a way how you get to this, and there is no. So many things are working together, and you have to find your own style. So I don't think that the things will be fundamentally changing in the future. So we will have similar problems like now. Being able to focus on the real intention and what we need to solve is a useful thing. and probably that's somewhat behind the success of BDD. That it's trying to encourage people to focus on what we are doing and what we're supposed to do, and let people a little bit later jumping into the solution and get lost in the solution. And I think that is meaningful. Whether it will be feature files and give them when then, I don't know. That's the technical solution of that. Unfortunately, many people are just seeing this from BDD, because of course that's what is easier to see, and finding out how to have these conversations, how these examples or scenarios can support these conversations are much harder. So from that perspective, I absolutely understand that. But I think there will be no big change. That's my feeling, and we should maybe try to be open to see what the future brings. New technology probably introduces new challenges. We got new solutions that just inspires us to find even more new technologies, new ways of interaction, and all of that has their own beauty, and at the end, I think our profession is to have fun with solving these puzzles, or at least for myself, that's definitely the thing. So and every new puzzle is an excitement for me.
To your point about like the creativity, the solving new problems, and that's a fundamental part of how we grow as a civilization, let alone within software delivery and products and things, is I think is so key and so clutch to this. And so I think it is around how do we learn? How do we enable people to tackle these new creative solutions in the best way? And so I think it's a trend, honestly, on conversations kind of throughout the chain of how do you enable people to have the right information at the right time,
and in the right form,
scale, and in the right form, in order to make use of it, in order to make smart decisions for themselves, for their teams, for their organizations, and not be overwhelmed by it, and not be too glossed over as well, right? Like I think I've definitely seen, I'm more of a generalist, and I think that's in some ways a disadvantage at times, right? Like I don't know enough depth to sometimes make the right decision or really like tune the dials. But I accept that, and I know that, and I know when to call in for reinforcements of people who know a lot more in certain areas. And so I think there's a place for everyone, but how do we bridge those different disciplines, those different skill sets? How do we take the SQL, database expert who can tune the efficiency of a query and make sure that they're actually building something that matters for the business? How do we get them the information they need without diluting their skill set as a database expert? Like, how does that work? I don't know.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, the only thing I learned that there is no instant solution for that. No framework whatsoever will give you the perfect answer for that. So my answer for that is patience, and first try to learn about those people that you are working with, and then probably you have a chance to find the common platform where you can efficiently communicate with each other, and maybe then it works, but not always. So I also had experience where somehow, doesn't matter how hard we tried, it just simply didn't work. And I mean, from that perspective, we are in a good position. So at least we have options. We can go to another company, and then maybe there it will be fantastically working. And so that's, from that perspective, I think we are somewhat privileged.
Yeah, I also feel like it's the same problem at all the companies, like at different scales and maybe manifesting in slightly different ways or very different ways even. But it often comes down to that. How do people learn? How do people share information? how do decisions get made? And what's really interesting about all those problems is there isn't a right way. Like if there was, you'd have only one consultancy and it would be the one doing it that way and it would be fine, right? Instead, there's all these different ways that are right for the collective organization and for the stage of its maturity and all of that. And I think it can be really hard to see not only the differences if you haven't experienced, big company, small company, and all that, but what I've actually found is even harder than that is being able to see when you shift. Like when you move from being in a certain context where a certain way of working is actually the most efficient way of working, like genuinely you were doing a great job and this is awesome, to now you have, it might be a change in the size of your company, but it might also just be a change in the composition. It might be a change in the marketplace. It might be change somewhere else that in your customers' expectations that actually force you to operate a different way. And it's like, how do you identify those? Because once identified, we love solving problems. We'll solve those problems. But how do you know when you have a problem to solve? I don't know. That's I think the hard one.
Yeah, I think most people are just changing jobs, and this is how they figure. Because changing within the same context, within the same culture, is probably extraordinarily hard. And yeah, you are right. And that's also very interesting that sometimes the same thing that was working perfectly last year, there is some change. And I mean, you are working for some sort of travel. I don't know whether the travel agency is a good term for that, but I'm pretty sure that or whatever, something which is supporting travel.
Travel, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that no one was expecting these changes, and in a year ago, and probably absolutely different ways of working are has to be applied. I mostly do training, so that's I think my primary paying job here. And of course that also has changed quite much. And I've seen that there are different companies, they were using different strategies. So there were some companies who were just cutting all the trainings because there are hard times and whatever, they want to reserve some money. There were companies who were rather encouraging people to have more training because now they are having more time because less customer pressure, so that they can use this time to learn new things and apply changes. Yeah, pretty amazing that even, but yeah, so somehow companies are trying to react.
You're also getting challenged with how people learn. Like, how do people learn when they have a dog who's freaking out at home while you're in the middle of a training course, or how do they learn virtually versus in person? And there's all sorts of those challenges. And that's exactly what we're talking about, is that like how you learn, how you transfer information is like the foundational need for being able to make good decisions, being able to solve hard problems, and tackle new things instead of just kind of recreating the wheel all the time. But actually creating new innovations. So, yeah.
Good. I think we are about to move on the chain. Thank you very much. It was really great.